Discourses by Meher Baba, Volume 3, God as Infinite Love, page 175 to 180, 6th edition, 1968 printing. Reading by Marvin Winick. God as infinite love. Essence of God is love. Those who try to understand God through the intellect alone arrive at some cold and dry concept, which misses the very essence of the nature of God. It is true that God is infinite knowledge, infinite existence, infinite power, and infinite bliss. But God is not understood in his essence until he is also understood as infinite love. In the beyond state from which the entire universe springs and into which it ultimately merges, God is eternally infinite love. It is only when God's love is viewed in the limited context of forms, which arrives in the interim period of the appearance of the illusory universe of duality, that its infinity seems to have been impaired. Course of manifest love. When God's love experiences itself in and through the manifested forms of the universe, it goes through the following phases. 1, experiencing itself as extremely limited. 2, experiencing itself as becoming less and less limited and becoming more and more like infinite love. And 3, experiencing itself to be what it really is, infinite in essence and existence. The experience of limitation in love arises due to ignorance caused by the sanskaras, which are the byproduct of the evolution of consciousness. And the process of love becoming infinite is characterized by the shedding of these limiting sanskaras. Love as lust. After going through the almost unconscious stages of the mineral kingdom, love becomes conscious of itself as lust in animals. Its first appearance in human consciousness is also in the form of lust. Lust is the most limited form of love in human consciousness. In spite of the clear reference which lust has to other persons, it is indistinguishable from undiluted selfishness, because all the objects to which lust clings are desired for the sake of and from the viewpoint of the limited and separate self. At the same time, it is a form of love because it has in it some kind of appreciation for others, though this appreciation is completely vitiated by thick ignorance about the true self. Love in gross sphere. When human consciousness is completely caught up in the duality of the gross sphere of existence, love cannot express itself as anything other than lust of some type. A man likes curry because it tickles his palate. There are no higher considerations, so it is a form of lust. It is only a craving for the sensations of taste. Mind also has cravings for the bodily sensations of sight, smell, sound, and touch, and nourishes its crude ego life through the excitement derived from these sensations. Lust of every type is an entanglement with gross forms, independent of the spirit behind them. It is an expression of mere attachment to the objects of sense. Since in all forms of lust, the heart remains unfed and unexpressed, it becomes a perpetual vacuum and is in a state of unending suffering and non-fulfillment. Lust is extreme limitation. Love, which expresses itself as undiluted or 100% lust, is in a state of extreme limitation because it is helplessly caught up in ceaseless craving. When the heart is in the clutches of lust, the spirit remains, as it were, in a state of delusion or stupor. Its functioning is severely curtailed and perverted by the limiting ignorance to which it is subject. Its higher potentialities are denied expression and fulfillment, and this thwarting and suppression of the life of the spirit entails a state of utter bondage. In lust, self-assertion of infinity is indirect. Lust is the most limited form of love, functioning under the thraldom of ignorance. The unambiguous stamp of insufficiency, which lust invariably bears, is in itself a sign that it is an incomplete and inadequate expression of something deeper, which is vast and unlimited. Through the manifold and unending sufferings which are attendant upon undiluted lust, and the continued experience of frustration which it brings, the spirit is ceaselessly registering its unyielding protest against the utter superficiality of a life of unqualified lust. In this manner, the irrepressible voice of the infinity of God's love indirectly asserts the imperative claims of its unexpressed but unimpaired reality. 3 stages of the lover. Even in the lowest lustful life of the gross sphere, God is experiencing himself as a lover, but it is a state of a lover who is completely ignorant about the true nature of himself or the beloved. It is a state of a lover who is inexorably separated from the beloved by an opaque curtain of ununderstood duality. It is nevertheless the beginning of a long process by which the lover breaks through the enveloping curtain of ignorance and comes into his own truth as unbounded and unhampered love. But in order to get initiated into infinite love, the lover has to go through 2 other stages, which are characteristic of the subtle and mental spheres. Love in subtle sphere. The lover in the subtle sphere is not free from lust, but the lust which he experiences is not undiluted as in the gross sphere. The intensity of lust in the subtle sphere is about half that in the gross sphere. Besides, there is no gross expression of lust as in the gross sphere. The lover in the gross sphere is inextricably entangled with the gross objects. Hence, his lust finds gross expression. But the lover in the subtle sphere has gotten free from attachment to gross objects. Hence, in his case, lust remains unexpressed in the gross form. His lust has subtle expressions, but it cannot have gross expression. Besides, since about half of the original lust of the gross sphere gets sublimated in the subtle sphere, the lover in the subtle sphere experiences love not as undiluted lust, but in a higher form, as longing to be united with the beloved. Love as longing. Thus, in the gross sphere, love expresses itself as lust, and in the subtle sphere, it expresses itself as longing. Lust is a craving for sensations, and as such is completely selfish in motive. It has utter disregard for the well-being of the beloved. In longing, there is less of selfishness, and though it continues to be possessive in a way, the beloved is recognized as having worth and importance in his own right. Longing is a less limited form of love than lust. In longing, the curtain of duality has become more transparent and less obstructive, since the lover now consciously seeks to overcome duality between the lover and the beloved by securing the presence of the beloved. In lust, the emphasis is solely on the limited self, and the beloved is completely subsidiary to the gross needs of the self. In longing, the emphasis is equally distributed on the self and on the beloved, and the lover realizes that he exists for the beloved just in the same way as the beloved exists for him. Love in mental sphere. The lover in the mental sphere has an even higher and freer expression of love. In his case, though lust has not completely disappeared, it is mostly sublimated. Only about 1/4 of the original lust of the gross sphere remains, but it remains in a latent form without any expression. In the mental sphere, lust does not have even subtle expression. The lover of the mental sphere is detached from subtle objects, and he is free from possessive longing for the beloved, which is characteristic of the lover in the subtle sphere. Love as resignation. In the mental sphere, love expresses itself as complete resignation to the will of the beloved. All selfish desire, including longing for the presence of the beloved, has disappeared. Now the emphasis is solely on the worth and will of the beloved. Selfishness is utterly wiped out, and there is a far more abundant release of love in its pure form. However, even in the mental sphere, love has not become infinite, since there is still present the thin curtain of duality, which separates the lover from the beloved. Love is no longer in the clutches of selfishness, but it is still short of being infinite, because it is experienced through the medium of the finite mind. Just as in the lower spheres, it is experienced through the medium of the lower bodies. Divine love is infinite. Love becomes consciously infinite in being, as well as in expression, when the individual mind is transcended. Such love is rightly called divine, because it is characteristic of the God state, in which all duality is finally overcome. In divine love, lust has completely disappeared. It does not even exist in latent form. Divine love is unlimited in essence and expression, because it is experienced by the soul through the soul itself. In the gross, subtle, and mental spheres, the lover is conscious of being separated from the beloved. But when all these spheres are transcended, the lover is conscious of his unity with the beloved. The lover loses himself in the being of the beloved and knows that he is one with the beloved. Divine love is entirely free from the thraldom of desires or limiting self. In this state of infinity, the lover has no being apart from the beloved. He is the beloved himself. The divine romance. We thus have God as infinite love, first limiting himself in the forms of creation, and then recovering his infinity through the different stages of creation. All the stages of God's experience of being a finite lover ultimately culminate in his experiencing himself as the sole beloved. The sojourn of the soul is a thrilling divine romance in which the lover, who in the beginning is conscious of nothing but emptiness, frustration, superficiality, and the gnawing chains of bondage, gradually attains an increasingly fuller and freer expression of love, and ultimately disappears and merges in the divine beloved to realize the unity of the lover and the beloved in the supreme and eternal fact of God as infinite love. J. Baba.